one final test for the convergence of a series. This result is called the alternating series theorem, and the motivation for studying this test is from series of the form that I've given an example of. For example, consider the series summation -1 raised to n plus 1 divided by square root n. Okay, now this is an example of a series which is in fact convergent but not absolutely convergent. Right? We know that summation 1 by square root n diverges. However, when you have an alternating +1 -1 multiplying the same summits, it turns out that the series actually ends up converging. However, none of the tests that we have covered so far will actually be able to establish the convergence of this series, right? Because this series, it turns out, is actually convergent but not absolutely convergent. On the other hand, if you think about it, all of the tests that we have studied so far establish only absolute convergence, right? So none of them could possibly apply in order to conclude the convergence of the series that I've given here. Okay, but however, we will be able to show the convergence of the series using the alternating series theorem, which I'm going to present now. So here is a statement of the theorem. Consider some sequence xn with the following property. On one hand, this xn is non-negative. It's also decreasing, so xn plus 1 is less than or equal to xn for all n. And finally, this sequence converges to 0. Okay, if all of this is true, then if you look at the series -1 raised to n plus 1 xn, this fellow converges. Right? So what this tells you is that if you have a sequence of non-negative decreasing numbers that converges to 0, then the series that you get by adding these guys up with an alternating +1 -1 factor is guaranteed to converge. Right? As the example above demonstrates, the series is not guaranteed to converge absolutely. However, the series is guaranteed to converge. Okay. In fact, you can go one step further in the theorem and actually also bound the error between the running sums and the limit. Moreover, if Sn is the running sum, so let's write it, it's 1 to n minus 1 raised to k plus 1 xk, and S is the limit. And the error between Sn and S is always less than or equal to xn. Okay, so this xn sequence converges to 0. How fast it converges to 0, in fact, also bounds the error between the running sums and the final limit. Right? So the instantaneous value of xn in the running sum for any n, so if you stop after 10 terms, then x10 is in fact an upper bound on the error between the running sum and the final limit. Right? So it gives you a very clean way of even identifying how close the running sums are at any point compared to the asymptotic limit. Okay, so this is the statement of the alternating series theorem. Now we will go through a proof. Right? So before we write the entire proof, it might be worth getting some sort of a pictorial view of what's happening here. So what you're really doing is something like, if you look at the running sums, it's x1 minus x2 plus x3 minus x4 plus x5 and so on. Right? So if you think about it, you will see that visually the running sums kind of evolve like this. So you have x1, which is some value. X1 minus x2 is going to be less, clearly. Then when you add x3, you're going to go up. When you subtract x4, you go down. and kind of. So the running sums have this funny alternating type of thing. So this would be, let's say, S1, this would be S2, S3, and so on. So this is the visual you should keep in mind for this, for these kind of series. And you know, the up and down continues. However, the amplitudes of these deviations actually become smaller and smaller, and eventually the running sums become arbitrarily close to the limit S. Okay, so this is the visual to keep in mind. When I go through the claims that I'm making, it might be useful for you to go back against this figure and make sure that it aligns with that visual understanding. Okay, so I'm going to make 3 claims which essentially prove the entire theorem. Okay, the first of these is the following. If I define the subsequence S2n, okay, what is this? This is the subsequence of the running sums halted at all of the even positions. Okay, so S2, S4, S6, S8, and so on. This I'm claiming first is an increasing subsequence. Okay, this is my first claim. If you think about it, it's fairly straightforward. How do you go from S2 to S4? You first add one number and then subtract something smaller, because remember the xn sequence is decreasing. So in general, how do you go from S2n to S2n plus 2? Well, you first have to add something and then subtract something smaller. So therefore, this is going to be an increasing subsequence. So this is easy to show. So I'm just going to leave it for you to convince yourself of this. On the other hand, if you look at the subsequence that zooms in on all of the odd positions of the running sum, this is in fact a decreasing subsequence. Right? This is also not difficult to see. How do you go from S1 to S3? Well, you first subtract a number and then add something that is in absolute value less. Right? Similarly, in general, you go from S2n plus 1 to S2n plus 3 by first subtracting a positive number and then adding a positive number which is smaller in magnitude. And so, yeah, this kind of thing. Along the odd positions, the running sums decrease. Along the even positions, the running sums increase. Okay? Those are the first 2 claims, which I hope are trivial. And so, yeah, I'm not going to write more about it right now. Third claim is the most interesting. The third claim is that S2m is in fact less than or equal to S2n plus 1 for all m and n. Okay, what this tells you is that the value of the running sum at every even position is less than or equal to the value of the running sum at every odd position. So essentially, I mean, in the figure I've drawn, what we are saying is that if you look at the values taken along the odd points, which is this, that's actually like an upper envelope to the values taken at the even positions, right? The value taken at every even position is less than or equal to the value taken at every odd position. Okay, so this is the third part of the claim. Now this I will actually give you an argument for. So if m is equal to n, this is trivial. Right? Because yeah, that's, I leave that for you to check. So if m is equal to n, this is straightforward. If m is less than n, okay, again let's go back to the picture here. M is the even position. If m is less than n, you're talking about a point like this and let's say a point like this. Okay, well, how do you show that the value at the even position is less? Well, you just write the even positions up to the the position 2n and then go further up to go to 2n plus 1. So that's it's going to be. So the argument is again almost suggested by the picture that S2m in this case is going to be less than or equal to S2n. Remember, along the even positions, you are an increasing subsequence. So that's all there is. And this in turn is further less than or equal to S2n. 2n plus 1, because when you go from s to n to s to n plus 1, you have added something positive, and so the value is going to increase further. Okay, so this is straightforward. Similarly, what happens if m is actually greater than n? Okay, that means that your even position is in fact to the right of the odd position. So your so your odd position could be something like this. This is 2n plus 1, and the even position could be something like this, right? This again is straightforward. All you have to do is basically write the odd positions up to the point, well, 2n plus 1, and then kind of go down, right? That would take care of this. So how would you show this? You would say that s, let's say 2n plus 1 is in fact greater than or equal to s2m plus 1. Why? Because along the odd subsequence, this is in fact decreasing, right? And this in turn is greater than or equal to s2m. Okay, so again, go back and check. It's ultimately easily obtained. The picture gives you the intuition, but also gives you the argument kind of for how to establish this, and that proves our third claim. So first we said that if you look at the running sums, focus on the running sums along all of the even indices, then you get an increasing subsequence. If you focus on all the odd indices, you get a decreasing subsequence. However, the entries that you get along the odd positions are in fact always an upper bound to the what you get along the even position. So it's as though these running sums are alternating between an upper envelope, which is made up of the odd positions, and a lower envelope, which is made up of the even positions, right? And these two envelopes are eventually going to, well, meet at the value of the limit, right? That's kind of the, that's how the proof, that's how the argument goes. Now, given these three claims, the theorem is almost done, right? Why is that? If you look at what we have shown is firstly that if you look at s to n, what we have shown is that this is an increasing subsequence bounded from above, is an increasing sequence bounded from, why is it bounded from above? Well, it is bounded by every odd valued running sum, right? For example, s to n, the entire sequence is upper bounded by s1 or s3 or any of your odd positions. So which means it's an increasing sequence bounded from above. Similarly, if you look at s2n plus 1, this is a decreasing sequence. That is bounded from below. Okay, so this implies that both of these are convergent. One of them is monotone increasing and bounded from above, the other is monotone decreasing and bounded from below. So implies that there are limits, so which implies that if you look at s to n, this has a limit, let's call it s, and s to n plus 1 also has a limit, and let's call it t. Okay, now all I have to argue is that s is equal to t. Once I have shown this, that essentially completes the proof of the theorem, right? But if both of these guys converge, then clearly if you look at s2n plus 1 minus s2n, right? What is s2n plus 1 minus s2n? This is in fact x2n plus 1. The difference between these two must in fact converge to the difference between the limits, which is t minus s. So x2n plus 1 must converge to t minus s, but we know that x2n plus 1 in fact converges to 0, right? So this implies that t must be equal to s. Okay, so that's it, that completes the argument. What we have shown is that the running sums satisfy the property that the limit that you get by focusing on all the odd indices is the same as the limit that you get by focusing on the even indices. So these are two special subsequences. I leave it to you to convince yourself that if you can show that these two subsequences have the same limit, then indeed every subsequence has the same limit, and so the sequence itself, Sn, will have the limit S. Okay, so that completes the argument to show that the series -1 raised to n plus 1 xn in fact converges. Okay, I haven't, if you notice, proved the last part. This part I'm going to leave it as an exercise to you. This is fairly straightforward. Again, if you have followed the argument of this proof, it should be clear why at any point of time the running sum will be at most xn away from the asymptotic limit. Okay, so with this we will stop and talk about power series in the next video.